This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So let's talk about the playoffs and what needs to happen for the Browns to get to the playoffs and what can go wrong, what can't go wrong in order for the Browns to get to where you want them to get to. So let's talk about it. Let's bring up the playoff machine and we're going to play with the playoff machine a little bit. Now, right now, the Browns are the 6th seed in the NFL playoffs. All right, so let's jump into the playoff machine and see what the Browns need to happen. So this is week 13. This is if the Browns win week 13 and some other things happen, right? Let's say the Chargers win. I don't think that really affects anything if the Chargers win or lose. If the Steelers beat the Cardinals, that doesn't really change much. It just changes the Browns get the 5 or 6 seed if they win or lose. The Titans game has a lot of implication. This game right here has a lot of implications for the 7th seed between the Colts and the Titans. Same thing with this Denver Houston matchup. So if the Titans win, that game becomes for control of that 7th wild card seed. That's really where everything's at. And if the Browns lose, they fall to the 7th seed. If the Texans win and the Browns lose, the Browns stay at the 6th seed. If the Texans win and the Colts win, then the Browns stay at the 6th seed. So this week, this game, in the big picture of things, doesn't really affect the Browns as much as I think people might think. Fall into 7-5, it's not really the biggest effect in the world. It just puts more pressure on you towards the back end of the schedule. Now, let me go through and predict these games on how I think they'll go. I think the Chargers will beat the Patriots. I think the Steelers will beat the Cardinals. I think the Colts will beat the Titans, and I think the Texans will beat the Broncos. I'd stand on that. The Jets probably beating the Falcons, even though both teams, I'll go with the Falcons. They could at least run the ball. The Dolphins are going to win. The Buccaneers are going to win. The Eagles probably win. And I think the Browns do win this week versus the Rams. We'll see. And then I think the Jaguars win. Browns are at the 6th seed. If everything goes as I think. If they lose, they're at the 6th seed. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to win because it will put less pressure on you for the end of the season. But this is not really going to sway the Browns' positioning either way. And if Kansas City wins, they're the 1 seed, which means that Baltimore goes all the way to the 4th seed. Now let's go to week 14, right? Let's continue to play this game. The Patriots versus the Steelers. Steelers probably win that. Let's go Buccaneers. They're 6-7. That feels about right. The Buccaneers are 6-7. Probably go with the Colts here, or actually Bengals. Let's go Bengals here, and then this matchup becomes big, right? Because if they lose this one, they're still the 6th seed. If they win this one, they're still the 6th seed, right? Now, if the Browns lose both of these games, they fall to the 7th seed. See? Well, we'll see where they actually fall once we get done with the predictions. So let's just go here. Texans, I would go LA Rams versus, I'll go them. Bears, Lions, go Lions. I would go Saints here. I'll go Vikings, 49ers, Kansas City. Yeah, this could be a toss-up. Let's go Denver. Actually, Denver's not going to win like 8 in a row. Let's go there. Here, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Miami. All right. So if the Browns lose the next 2 games in a row, they lose to the Jaguars and then they lose to the Rams, what happens? They end up the 7th seed. Oh, no, my bad. They end up the 7th seed still. So you win both of these games, you probably end up at 6th seed. You lose the Jaguars game, you lose the Rams game, you're at the 7th seed. So again, it would put a lot of pressure on the last 4 weeks of the season. That's why you don't want to lose these games. And I don't think they'll beat the Jaguars. We'll see, but I don't think they'll beat the Jaguars, even though it's at home. This Browns team does play well at home. Let's say end of week 14, they're 8-5. They have the 7th seed. That feels pretty realistic, right? All right, let's go to week 15. Raiders probably win that. And then you go Falcons 7-7. That makes sense. Where would the Vikings be at? What, 8-6? I think that's a bit high for them, but we'll see what they play for the rest of the year. Browns versus the Bears. I think the Browns will win that. Then you go against I think the Lions are winning that. Pittsburgh against the Colts. I think the Colts will win that. Then you have the Dolphins, Texans versus Titans. I'll go Texans here. It pushes the Browns back to the 7th seed. Buccaneers, Saints, 49ers. I don't know. This could go either way. I'll go Washington, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Baltimore versus the Jaguars. I'll go Baltimore. And then I would go Kansas City. Right? So the Browns would be the 7th seed at 9-5. Now, interestingly enough, with the losses catch up to you, like if you lose both of these games, I think you're still the 7th seed. So if the Browns in the next 3 weeks, more than likely, if they can go and lose against the Rams, lose against the Jaguars, and if they beat the Bears, they're fine. Now, if they lose to the Bears or tie to the Bears, they're out the playoffs. But if they beat the Bears, they're fine. Right? So, again, I think they'll win this game against the Rams. I think they'll lose the game against the Jaguars. I think they'll win the game against the Bears. Right? I think that's all reasonable prediction stuff right here. Even if you don't have Myles Garrett in this Rams game, I think that's a winnable game. The Rams have lost to worse teams than the Browns without Myles Garrett. And that's just fact. So we'll see who the Browns have to play at quarterback. If it's DTR, if it's Joe Flacco, I still think that the Browns can pull that one out. All right, week 16 here. This is where you don't want to put all that pressure on you, right? This is where you want to win the Rams game so you don't have that pressure. Because let's say Saints win that. I don't think the Bengals are going to get swept by Pittsburgh, so I'll go Pittsburgh loses there. And then you have Buffalo. Where does that have Buffalo at? If that has Buffalo, okay, so Buffalo's at what, 6-6? That feels right. We'll predict this game last because it's the Browns game. Jets versus Washington. I just don't think it matters either way. We'll say Jets. Titans over, no. Colts versus Falcons. I think the Colts are better. But the Colts aren't 9-6 better. Yeah, okay. There it is. Then you have the Panthers right here. There. Jaguars. Oh, God. Arizona versus Chicago. I'm going to go Arizona. Miami, Denver, and Kansas City, Eagles, 49ers. Now, if the Browns win this one, they're the 5 seed. If they lose this one, they're the 6 seed. Win, lose. Let's say the Browns lose this one, right? Because CJ Stroud's playing really well, even though he's been a little up and down as of late. Let's say they lose this one. And again, you lose that one, you're out. So you got to win, one? You got to go about 2-2, right? You got to beat the Bears. You got to beat either the Jaguars. You got to beat the Bears and one of the Rams, the Jaguars, and the Texans. So let's say that's all that happens. The Browns are at 9-6 because they beat the Bears, they beat the Rams. Okay? Which feels pretty realistic. You get to week 17. Browns at Jets. Well, we'll predict that last, but no, I can't do that now. All right. Say the Browns win that. Detroit versus Dallas. Let's say Dallas. Miami versus Baltimore. Let's give that to Baltimore. New England versus the Bills. Let's give that to Bills. Chicago versus the Atlanta Falcons. Let's give that to the Falcons. Falcons at 9-7 don't feel right, but let's say they get to 9-7. Colts, Jaguars, Texans, and I guess the Rams will win that. Eagles. Yeah, I would say the Saints would probably win that. Or no, the Saints lose that. Yeah, Saints lose that. There's no way the NFC South is getting 2 teams in the playoffs, but this ain't an NFC South video. Then the 49ers, Pittsburgh's not winning that. The Chiefs, and where do I have Denver at? And where do I have the Chargers at? So in the AFC West, Denver is 6-5, and the Chargers are 5-7. I think the Chargers win that. And then the Vikings, but let's say the Chargers, does that really change anything here? It doesn't. Okay. Well, let's say that happens. If the Browns win this game, they're 10-6, they're 6 seed. If they lose this game, they're the 7 seed. They have to win the next week, right? So let's say they beat the Jets week 18. Then it's, let's say Seahawks, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. And what that would make Baltimore finish, I mean, not Baltimore, Pittsburgh finish at 9-8, which feels very realistic for them. The Buccaneers versus the Carolina Panthers. Buccaneers. The Vikings versus the Lions. The Chicago Bears. No. They're not beating the Packers. The Houston Texans versus the Indianapolis Colts. This would pretty much control that 7 seed, right? No, because Houston has the 1 seed. Okay, Houston's not going to 11-6, 12-5. My God, I got Houston winning way too many football games. Hold on. Let me go back through that and get rid of some of that, because that's just, they're not going to go 11-5, are they? Yeah, they could. They play the Jets. They play the Denver Broncos. Let's say Denver wins this one. Okay, yeah, let's say Denver wins that one. I think that's where you even it out. Denver wins that one. All right, so Denver gets that one. What happens then if Denver wins this next week versus the Chargers? Nothing changes. Even though they got 2 extra wins, nothing changes because they're 9-7. Okay, so even keep that as a win. Let's see what happens if Denver wins this week, right? If Denver wins here, they're 7 seed. So, yeah. Buffalo versus Miami. Boy, Buffalo's going to be in the dumps if this holds up, because that means Buffalo at 9-8. Yeah, that feels right for them. Jets versus the Patriots. Let's go Jets here. Look, man, I know Aaron Rodgers is supposed to come back, but I don't know. I don't feel great about that one either. Falcons versus Saints. What record do I have them both at? The Falcons they're not a 10-win team, and nor are the New Orleans Saints. So I'm gonna get that to the Saints. Now everything's right with the world. There's one NFC South team, and it's probably Tampa Bay, and I think that's probably the team that should get out of the NFC South. The Eagles here, who I have at 16-1. I think it's very possible. They don't really play anybody difficult. Like, let's make them lose a difficult game here. Since 16-1's a bit extreme, they play the Seahawks. I really don't see the Seahawks beating them, though. But they have a really difficult game this week. Let's say they lose this one. Boom. Okay, they're 15-2. Much more realistic. All right. Even though they were like something in 1 last year, they're a really good team. Okay, and then the Rams. Say the Rams beat the 49ers. Even though the 49ers weren't going to have to play. Yeah, that feels right. Jacksonville over them. So Jacksonville gets 13-4. And the Cowboys win. right. So this is what happens here. And if the Browns win, they would beat a 5 seed at 11-6. If the Browns lose, they would be out the playoffs. So that is what it would come down to. You got to beat the Bengals. You got to beat the Jets. And got to beat the Bears. And then you have to get one out of these three, right? One out of the Rams, one out of the Jaguars, or one out of the Texans. You got to win one of those games. If you lose all three of those games, you just go 10 wins, you don't get in. So you got to win one against the Rams. If you don't get that one, so if you don't get the Rams one, let's say you lose this one, you got to get this one at home versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. That'll put you at the 5 seed. If you lose that one, you're not in. And if you win this one, but you lose all the other ones, you're the 5 seed here. So that's the way it's probably going to shake out for the Browns. You want to win these three, the Bengals, the Jets, and then you have to find one. I mean, not one, but you have to find two. So Bengals, Jets, Bears. You got to win those three. Those are must wins because they're the easiest games you have on the schedule. And then between your difficult games with the Texans and the Jaguars, and you could throw in the Rams because of the injury concerns, got to win one of those games. If you win this week, you put yourself in a great position. And then let's just get wacky with it. Let's say the Browns somehow find a way to win out, right? Let's say they win out with everything else, right? They win out. If the Browns win out, they could be the 3rd seed. Like that's the ceiling of the season, is they could be the 3rd seed, play the Colts or somebody, and have a real shot to move on to the 2nd round of the playoffs. And then you would play, you're the 3rd seed, so you'll play Miami if Miami won that game, or you would play Baltimore. But I don't think you would end up playing. There's no way you can end up playing Kansas City at the 3 seed in the 2nd round. So winning out would be great, but that's kind of the playoff scenarios for the Cleveland Browns. That's us playing the schedule game. That's us playing with the machine. Let me know if there's any scenarios in which you want to see get broken down. And in this scenario, Cincinnati finished 7-10, which I feel like is very realistic. The Pittsburgh Steelers finished 9-8, which I feel like is very realistic. Let me reset the wins for the Browns. So let's say they win here, lose, win, lose, win. Okay, so let's say they get to 11-6, they're the 5 seed. They play Miami in the 1st round. Browns 11-6. I think that's pretty reasonable at this point, given how this team's played. And the reason I have them at 11-6 and Pittsburgh at 9-8, despite the differences, is because I think the defense is much better for the Cleveland Browns than it is for Pittsburgh. And I think that offense still has a lot of issues in Pittsburgh, despite firing Matt Canada. I know they're excited. They got like 400 yards of offense for the first time in a while, but still only 16 points. They still have the issues. I think if the Browns get a healthy DTR for the rest of the season, I think that offense is going to pick itself up and not be great, but be fine enough to win the games that they need to win versus that. And let me make sure I don't got Pittsburgh having any crazy losses here, right? Yeah, they're going to win that one. They'll win that one. I don't think they beat the Colts. I think the Colts are a better team. I do think the Bengals find a way to get one because they're not terrible. They're just not very good. And Pittsburgh's not good enough to kind of hold that off. And then Pittsburgh loses against Seahawks. It feels right. And loses against the things. Let's say they get that win, though. Let's see what happens here if they get that win. Yeah, let's say even if Pittsburgh gets that win, gets a 10-7, it doesn't really affect things. But I don't think that they do. So 9-8, 7-10, that feels right. Buffalo at 9-8, Miami at 13-4, that feels right. Jets at 6-11, it feels right. New England at 2-15, it's crazy, but it feels pretty right. Like you look at that schedule, I don't see who they beat. Let's see who if we go through New England, who do they beat? No. I mean, like they can always beat themselves, but like the best they can do is spoil. They have 2 wins. Kansas City, Denver, 10-7. That feels pretty good given where they're on the track to be. The Los Angeles Chargers at 6-10 feels pretty right given where they're on the track to be. Did I not rank one of their games? I don't think it really matters. Kansas City, right? So 6-11, yeah, it feels right. Vegas 6-11 feels right. Houston 10-7, that feels right. Tennessee 4-13, it feels right. Washington 4-5, yeah, all this stuff feels right on the AFC side for me. So that's the prediction there. But hey, Browns lose one of these games, they go from the 5 seed to nothing. So that's very interesting, right? Like, I do think that the Browns probably need to get 3. Things could bounce their way with 10 wins, but it depends on where you get those 10 wins as well, right? If you get them all against AFC opponents, let's say you lose the Bears game, but you win the Jaguars game. That's how you can get in with 10. And then I think you can even withstand losing. I don't know. I don't think you get the tiebreaker over the Denver Broncos if they get to 7. No, you do. Okay. So, yeah, if you wanted to get in with 10 wins, the Browns' 10 wins would have to be against AFC teams. So 3 of those wins would have to be against AFC teams in order to get in with 10. So that's the scenario, right? If the Browns get 11, it's cool. But they need 3 AFC wins, right? They need an AFC win or an extra win to get them over the hump, right? So that's where we are with the Browns. It's crazy. It could be 12-5 and realistically get the 5 seed. But that's where the Browns are. We'll see how the season plays out. But that's the criteria you need to know. It's not necessarily every week it resets. It's just the formula is you need to get 3 AFC wins, right? You got 2 that you feel good about against the Jets and the Bengals. But you need to get one between the Texans, the Jaguars, one between the Texans or Jaguars, or you need to win an extra NFC game to get you over the hump, right? If you beat the Rams and then you lose to the Jaguars, even though you're 11 wins, that'll get you over because that'll get you over everybody else. But if you don't have that win versus them and you just end up at 10-7, you don't get it. So 10-7, not going to be good enough. You just have to make sure that you get to 10-7 with a couple of AFC North wins. I mean, not AFC North, AFC wins. So that's the scenario. Let me know if this cleared anything up for y'all in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night. Peace.